morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Just to let you know that this will be recorded, this session, so it should have started already, I think. Welcome to the BCS Pride Talks 2022. I'm Nicola Martin. I've stepped in as host for Maddie McMurray. Unfortunately, they've lost their voice, so I'm taking over for this evening. Rather than being the co-host, I'll be the host. We'll be listening to a talk from Callum Akehurst Ryan, and I'll give you a little intro for him in a moment. I'll just run through a couple of slides. So for anyone new to BCS who has never been to one of our events or isn't a member, I just wanted to run through a few notes about who we are. The BCS is a member-led organisation with over 60,000 members in 150 countries globally. The agenda is to lead the IT industry through its ethical challenges, to support the people who work in the industry, and to make IT good for society by raising standards of competence and conduct across the IT industry and tackling the ethical challenges we face along the way. BCS provides support to its members by hosting events, running mentoring programs, and offering multiple early career and further progression tools. Members are able to contribute towards causes they are passionate about by joining community groups. So I do actually recommend to anyone who isn't a member on the call, please reach out to either myself or Maddie. We'll probably provide details at the end of this if you have any questions about being a member. We can point you in the right direction. So if you are not familiar, we are BCS Pride. The group started earlier this year. BCS Pride is a new committee group within the BCS. Our goals include increasing the visibility of LGBTQIA+ members of BCS within the BCS through online events, social media, and engagement with the wider BCS specialist and regional groups. We also work with the wider BCS membership to develop an understanding of the importance of LGBTQIA+ and other diversity in the sector. We raise awareness of BCS within diverse communities and improve access for LGBTQIA individuals to IT and digital training, development, and employment. We investigate, identify, and then offer solutions to barriers to engagement with the BCS, e.g. through mentoring, myth busting, and/or identifying funding for LGBTQIA+ individuals to access IT and digital-based education and training and accreditation. Our speaker for today, as I mentioned earlier, is Callum Akehurst Ryan. He's had a variety of roles as a test engineer, test lead, project manager, and Agile coach. He has a well-rounded approach to leadership in an Agile environment and doesn't shy away from decision-making, and will always work with people to find the best outcomes possible. And Callum will give a bigger introduction when he starts to speak. Over to Callum.
Cool, thank you, Nicola. Just going to share my screen there. So yes, hello everyone. So thank you for having me speak here. So I'm going to speak about diversity of thought and the human side of development, and how basically diversity, especially now with being Pride Month, diversity in teams can really help the quality of what we're building. But a bit about me beforehand. Yes, I am Callum Akehurst Ryan, the lead quality engineer at Agile, which is an AI company specializing in defense and national security, who help organizations to rapidly identify threats and opportunity signals buried within high volumes of information. But other than that, I'm a certified human. I've been a tester for about 16 years, focused on agile testing and team integration, working across a number of industries, so finance, banking, broadcast, retail. And as I said, I'm now a lead quality engineer in the defense space. I have a degree in psychology with a specific interest in personality and human factors, which is why I'm so interested in being or bringing in diversity and the human side of development. And as well as being a kick-ass dungeon master, I have an award for my Dungeons and Dragons games. I'm also, as you can tell, an LGBTQIA+ engineer with pronouns he, him. So let's dive into things. I want to talk about an engineering monoculture. Development, and especially testing within development, has swung really far towards engineering. What we're seeing is that conferences and blogs are increasingly focused on technology and technological outcomes. And we're seeing that Agile teams frequently are looking for developers in test. They're looking for full stack developers. We see a lot of automate everything approaches as well. So these are basically indications that we're swinging strongly towards engineering solutions for our teams. And why is that? Well, technology's increased. We now know that we have to work within a high technology environment, and we're looking for very technical people to be able to help us with dealing with these technology challenges. And we want T-shaped people. We want people who are good at a lot of things, but usually a lot of things focused around technology. So especially in the testing side of things, for myself, we're looking for people who can code, who can use tools, but can also be full stack and investigate technological solutions. And also it's cheaper to bring in a lot of engineers who can do all these things. But as we move towards high engineering focused teams, we can get to the prevalence of a monoculture. And what I mean by that is a culture where everybody has the same sorts of thoughts and opinions. What we see is that women and people in minority groups, like LGBTQIA+ people, are increasingly put off by all the technology's job adverts. And there's a people like us mentality when people are asked to hire into teams. And that shows in a drive towards logical decision-making rather than human factors in our hiring strategy, which may put people off or drive people out of teams. And there's also assumed inclusion of engineering backgrounds in our teams, which makes it harder for people to engage. What we tend to see by that is there's an assumption that you went to a certain university, that you have a certain type of degree, that you've got the same sort of lifestyle or background as everyone else in your team. It's this assumed inclusion of being heteronormative and just cultural normative, as well as being neurotypical in teams. And because of this monoculture that comes from basically just assuming that everyone's going to think and be the same, we find that there are problems, and especially problems in testing, because if we base quality on the same biases as the rest of our teams, then issues won't be found. So a heuristic that we can use for finding out quality in our teams is our own life experiences. The easiest way to determine whether or not something's good is to say, do I like this product? Or how would I use it? So we can bring in the insights that we have about the software from the real world. Everybody has a completely unique perspective based on their own background, their own life experiences that can bring additional insights into product design and development as well. So we're not just relying on the specification or the code to say what's right. And importantly, we're not just agreeing with everyone else in the room. We're using our perspective to improve things. And by people bringing their own individual take on things, which is shaped by their own unique experiences, personality, and lifestyle, we can develop what I call socially informed solutions. And there's a really easy way to identify to this. If you think about running in an Agile team, if you run any retrospectives where you are asked your opinions on how things are going, that's basically a socially informed solution to process problems. We come in and say, this is what we liked, this is what we didn't like, and we try and make changes based on that. And we can do the same thing there with our software development or any sort of development, really. By bringing our own individual takes on things, shaped by our unique experiences, like I say, we're developing these socially informed solutions. And that means bringing in diversity into our workforce and teams and sharing the life experiences of different people to increase the overall understanding of people that we have as our customer base, and also increase our empathy, which increases our ability to test. So what I mean by that is the more types of people that we have in our teams, the more we will see and be able to think about different types of people as part of our customer base, the different users of our product, how they might experience things. So we could ask questions about usability, accessibility, understandability, and even do people want this product, by having different people and thinking about, by being aware of their different lifestyles and their needs and their wants. So this is where I relate it to the LGBTQIA+ Pride Month. As a gay man, if you couldn't tell from the voice and the shirt, within the technology industry, I've been able to identify issues that haven't been thought of by my colleagues. So I worked for a big financial company that launched a website that advertised financial services to save for a wedding. And I commented on an internal project page to say, it's a bit disappointing that the company hasn't taken the opportunity to include civil partnerships as part of this campaign. Within about the next couple of hours, I was actually speaking to the CEO of the company to change that. And I've been part of pension schemes at new companies that I've joined, where I was asked to say what my spouse and marriage situation was, and it only included husband or weddings. Based on my feedback, we got that change to be open up to include civil partnerships and civil partners. And I've also worked on getting companies added to Stonewall's list of top 10 companies for LGBTQIA+ inclusion, which has meant pushing for more diversity within advertising, and also saying that we should provide training to customer service group representatives to handle the specific needs of customers within minority groups as well. Now, other people would be able to have found these issues, but because they refer to my experiences, they're more front of mind and top of mind for me, so they're easier to spot. They speak to my lifestyle and who I am as a person. So I'm able to say, yes, these are things that I can spot easily. There's less of a barrier to entry for me. So another example of this would be something like accessibility. People who have different accessibility needs would have more exposure to what works or doesn't work for them. So they could easily or more easily input into improving quality over accessibility. That's not to say somebody who is neurotypical, able-bodied, doesn't have accessibility needs, can't do that. It's just that it's easier when you're living in that experience to spot things in that way. And yes, that is a picture of me in drag. It's really terrible. And now that I see it full screen, I regret my decisions to add it to these slides. So thinking about these things and thinking about being queer in engineering, this is the time of year. This is Pride. This is the time of year where companies change to show we have rainbow flag icons. We're showing that we have pride, and we're showing that, we want people who are diverse. We want people who are queer to come and work with us to help our teams. And it's really important to have this visibility because it's a signal that this is a safe space to work in, right? And it's important because having those signals are really important, are really needed even today. Because research by the charity Stonewall revealed that in 2018, over a third of LGBTQIA+ professionals in the UK that were surveyed had hidden their LGBTQIA+ status from their employers out of fear of discrimination. And that's a fear that's not without merit, because almost 1 in 5 of those LGBTQIA+ staff that were surveyed had been the target of negative comments or negative conduct from work colleagues within the last year because of their LGBTQIA+ status. And it's not just the UK, right? Until recently, you could be fired for being gay or transgender in many states in the UK, in the US. And as we go to like the Middle East and different countries there is a slew of anti-LGBTQIA+ laws there that makes it easy to discriminate against people for being diverse. So yes, we want queer people because we can bring in, that brilliance, that knowing, diversity into our teams. And companies say, yes, we want that. And it's important to show that we want that, because now, there's still a long way to go in being, truly accepted and diverse within the workplace. There's a couple of quotes that came out from the Stonewall Survey. So this was somebody that said that whilst they were serving a customer, they corrected them on their pronouns, and that customer laughed at them. And the supervisor who witnessed everything just said, don't be so dramatic about it. And another situation where at somebody's office, they were just using the word gay as an insult. And this ignorance led them to think that they didn't want to come out in the workplace. They wouldn't feel comfortable being out in the workplace. And that's something that I've seen firsthand. Banter culture and like using things like, oh, that's so gay in the workplace, and how that has an effect on people is still prevalent, even, in the 2020s. I worked at an organization where in the office, somebody who was LGBTQIA+, heard the use of homophobic slurs being thrown around in the office. And they reported it on a private Slack channel that I was in as an out queer person who was more senior in the company. And when I said, look, that's not on, you've got to speak about this, based on Stonewall's recommendations, this is something that is wrong. It's effectively almost hate speech, and it's something that's toxic for the work environment. As soon as I'd said that, HR and management jumped on me. They got me on a phone call and they basically laid into me because I'd said that it's not on, and effectively hate speech against a protected characteristic. And the argument that they had was that the company wanted to protect their banter culture because they wanted it to be a fun place to work. To which my response was, is it fun for the poor LGBTQIA person who's been made to feel very small and has been made to feel like this is a hostile environment that they don't want to work in anymore? They didn't come back to me on that one, but yes, that was one of the problems that I'd seen about being authentic in the workplace. And again, something that happened directly to me. As a software tester, it's my role to present information about a product or a system to teams, which sometimes isn't good news. And I've always tried to use empathy and friendly human connection to my teammates to show that even though I'm giving bad news, I'm not a bad guy. And that usually means trying to be my authentic self. I talk with my hands, as you can see on video, and frankly, I'm a bit camp. I'm theatrical. And what I've seen is that sometimes people who don't want to listen to bad news will completely dismiss me or shut me down by saying that I'm too emotional. And to me, this seems like a quick way for someone to delegitimize my contributions to the team by trying to say that my way of thinking isn't valid, so can be completely ignored. And that's made me feel terrible because I've been dismissed because of who I am, rather than my ideas and my contribution being engaged with. This is basically what I was saying about a monoculture of engineering. If you present something that isn't the masculine, logical sense into your teams, you can be dismissed because you're not one of the lads, one of the guys. Oh, you're not an engineer. You're bringing emotions into play here. And my experience of being dismissed for my differences in this way is not isolated. I'd spoken to women in the IT industry, and I've heard many similar stories where comments or suggestions that they've made have been overlooked or dismissed and called emotional. Not because it's emotional, it's a really legitimate state, but just it's a way to throw things out and just say, we're ignoring you, you're not one of us, you're disagreeing with us, and we can ignore you. Outgroup bias is a big thing. And in 2017, August 2017, there was a paper that was written by a Google engineer that was all over the news because it painted a picture of engineering being something that had to be completely based on logic, where emotional intelligence needed to be sacrificed in order to succeed. I don't know if anyone remembers this story, but effectively they said that women should not be engineers because they have emotional intelligence and that only men could be true engineers. Cases like this show that there's still so much work to do, like I said, to bring people on the journey towards embracing different types of people. And one way we can do that is to show how diversity leads to better designed and developed software, those socially informed solutions, like I said. And being visible during Pride Month, organizations doing Pride outreach is one way that they can do that. And this is not something that's just limited to people of minority backgrounds. There are so many ways that people can be impacted negatively by a monoculture. I spoke to a graduate developer who was punky, and they had their own style, and they were being their authentic self. They were wearing, bracelets with spikes on them, lots of black and so on. And they were told by, this was a large American IT institution, they were told not to dress a certain way, that they had to conform in order to get ahead, even though there was no dress code at this organization. That impacted their confidence. It made it so that they really couldn't bring their individuality to work. It basically made them compartmentalize their life and their work. It reduced their enthusiasm for working in that organization. Had an impact on their work because it was really energy consuming, basically trying not to be their authentic self. And it basically made them not come out. They were also queer, and they chose not to come out because of this monoculture that had been impressed upon them. And what about introverts versus extroverts? Traditionally, in the workplace, extroverts excel more because they are able to just put words out there and not worry so much about it, or put words out there quickly because they're not having to think so much about how they want to put things across. But we should take into consideration how to engage with introverts, even if they're not part of the prevailing monoculture. And frequently, we're told it's unprofessional to bring our individual self to work. And that reduces the diversity of our development teams, of our work colleagues so far, and increases the monoculture that basically suggests there is one correct way to look, to think, to talk, or to speak. Or even, yeah, I said to think. Imagine being asked to solve a complex mathematics problem whilst also acting like a Shakespearean hero. Or imagine trying to design a new type of car whilst pretending to be an elven priestess. You'd probably find that one of these things really took energy away from the other thing that you were trying to do, and you did both of them poorly. It's exhausting to feel like you're having to act all of the time, and it's pretty much impossible to keep up forever. It leads to negative psychological consequences, such as anxiety and depression. And you can really start to feel alone or disconnected from those around you because you're constantly acting with people. So you're feeling that your interactions are inauthentic. And that inauthenticity just drives a wedge between you and people. If I were to act in a way that was discordant with who I was, it would just take energy away from being able to do my job. Sure, as a queer person, as a quite camp queer person, I could try to butch it up and act in a way where there was no chance of me being called emotional, but I'd be sacrificing so much by doing so. I'd be worried that instead of just engaging with my content or putting out what I wanted to put out there, I was worried about looking at myself and how was I saying things? What tone of voice? How was I dressed? How were my hand mannerisms going? And when I'm trying to speak about technical or complex issues in computer science, I don't want to be wasting effort on worrying about my tone of voice. I want to be able to just not think about that and focus on the engineering task at hand without fear of being made to act a certain way. And here's a quote from Ginny Tu, who is the Vice President of Commercial Strategy at Comcast, who said, "Being somewhere where we know it's okay to be out and myself has helped me focus." They're not focusing on being inauthentic or worried about being inauthentic. They're able to focus on the task at hand and put all of their emotional energy into the task at hand. You might have heard of this concept of spoons, that on any given day. You only have so many spoons to give to the day. And if you're spending a lot on them on being in the closet, worrying about how you're coming across to people, you're not spending those spoons, those units of energy on your actual work, on development problems, on solving problems. And here's another quote by a Chief People and Culture Officer from Stitch Fix, Jevon Sue Lennox, who said that coming out is going to be the frontier of how authentic and transparent I want to be about who I am. If you can't come out in your workplace, if you don't feel that you can be that side of your authentic self, you're probably going to find that you're compartmentalizing your whole home life and your work life. So you will start to box things up and not be able to bring your authentic self into the workplace, which means you're not going to be able to create those socially informed solutions for things. And it's worth being aware that needs of being different from each other are always changing. And it's not something that will go away. If we think recently, ways of working completely changed because of something that impacted a number of people. We're all now working from home. And people now are also, like we're finding Generation Z, are finding that they want to be more involved and they're more outspoken about processes. People aren't assuming that things are the way they need to be. They want to have more personal investment to companies. And also that we're finding that people are leaving companies where they can't have that personal stake in them. We also find that younger people don't like phone calls. We're finding that there's a lot more Slack messaging or asynchronous messaging rather than phone calls or face-to-face conversations even. And companies are being held to higher ethical standards. Even if you're not LGBTQIA+, more people are allies and want to work for companies that are outwardly showing that people can be their authentic selves at them, or that they are doing outreach and showing that they support the community. And a lot of that comes from the fact that there's more queer people than ever now. I think recent studies show that like more than half of young people are identifying as not heterosexual. And these people are looking for role models. They're looking for queer role models in work and in their communities and in software development and software testing. And they're also looking to be their authentic self as well. We need to be agile enough in our processes, in our behaviors, in our ways of thinking to support all of these needs. And also we need to be able to shift our culture to do this as well. And we're finding that so many companies are now looking to changing culture, and they're talking a lot more about culture, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And some of that has just come from working apart from each other, not being in the same location, and assumed inclusion from that. And some of it comes from the Great Resignation, that people are really thinking about, what do I want to be doing with my career and with my life? And do I want to be working at a place that doesn't support, what ethical standards, what cultural standards that I have as well? So we can help with that by smashing monoculture. We want to effectively help improve diversity in our workforce to allow all of the things that I've talked about, socially informed solutions, preventing people from feeling they can't be authentic, and also changing the ways that we want to engage with our workforces as well. At a business level, there's large things that we can address. We can support diversity and inclusion initiatives in the workplace. We can support job adverts that use language that's more appealing for more types of people. And we can create environments that are more pleasant for a diverse group of people. We can reduce pub culture. We can have more flexible working hours for single mothers. We can have decor that is not just my first man's bachelor pad, that actually speaks to more people. And also things like temperature in the office, because we know that different people have different needs when it comes to temperature. And we can train people on the ways to manage and interact with different types of people, specifically around microaggressions, or forcing to say to people that you're too emotional, and knowing how that could be seen as homophobic. And just like with software development, where we have to point out where there are bugs in systems and what we've developed, we can also point out where our behaviors are not working or could be improved. Challenge our colleagues to be more diverse in their thinking. Point out when everyone's behaving like there's no other options, because there's always other options that we can consider. We can bring our authentic self, emotions and all, to discussions to ensure that we're not washed along in the tide of people saying, hey, here's the one way we can do things, and all going, yep, that seems legit. And we can support other people's diverse viewpoints and at least give them the consideration and respect that they deserve. And we need to educate ourselves on D&I topics like being LGBTQIA+, so that we can learn to think like different people and also learn how to work with people who are in those protected characteristic groups. We need to also be different. We need to bring our difference, because everybody has characteristics that are different from other people. We need to be able to bring those to the workplace. And I'm sure we've always heard the phrases, it's always been like that at some point in our careers or our lives. But we should be able to say, why? Does that mean that no one's ever wondered if there's a better way of doing things or a better way of being? Because there usually is, but people just resist change. People tend to resist change and will stick to what they know because it feels familiar. In psychology terms, familiar, there are chemical paths that run through your brain that basically reward you for doing the same thing over and over again, even if it's the wrong thing or is just plain wrong. It means that people will put more effort into protecting the monoculture, the familiar, the heteronormative, than they would to think about a small change that might even help them. And to that end, we find that being ourselves is hard. If you've worked and done the same thing or behaved the same way over and over again, being your authentic self and changing away from that is hard. And for me, it means having to make a choice about coming out every time I talk to someone. I've just joined a new company and I had to make a choice about, is this a company where I feel safe to come out every time I talk to someone new? There's a risk that I could be compartmentalized to being the gay one in a team. I have to also work harder to show that I'm technical because of being my authentic self. If it's just easy to stereotype me into being theatrical and a good people person, as opposed to logical and an engineering type, then I have to work harder to prove that whilst not losing myself as well. And I also have to know that there are some people, some teams and some companies that I just can't work with, and knowing how to suss them out. Will there be companies where I can't be my authentic self? And how do I drive that out and understand that? But it is really worth it, not just for myself, being able to, not waste energy on solving problems, wasting energy that I could be using on solving problems by, hiding who I am. But it's worth it for the culture of an organization, because being my authentic self has led to others feeling that they can be their authentic self as well. I've had people come to me and say, thank you for being, outwardly queer at work, because it's led me to come out as well. I felt like I had somebody that I felt safe around and could be queer, around as well. And as I said, diversity of thought and diversity of people really helps organizations and product teams grow as well. We need to not squash people's authenticity. We need to not question their authenticity. We need to embrace it so that we can improve what we're doing. And there's a number of ways that we can do that immediately. So I talked about organizational ways that we can change, but as people, we can do that. If we don't just talk about work, especially when we're in a Zoom conversation like this, and we talk about who we are as people, we make a safe space to be open and authentic about ourselves. So talk about your weekend, talk about your interests and hobbies, be human to each other. Monoculture comes from just thinking like we're all engineers and we all have to think the same way, rather than being human to each other. We can make safe spaces. Something as simple as adding your pronouns to your Slack shows that we're a safe space. Even if you're an ally and you're cisgendered, it just normalizes things. It makes things a safe space for people to be authentic, to be queer in an engineering team. Be open to conversations and collaboration as well. Don't just shut them down. Don't look for easy ways to say, you're being emotional, I don't need to talk to you anymore. And respect people's differences and hear them out. Everybody has different life experiences to you and different ways of thinking. So if we listen to what they're thinking about, we're going to learn a lot, and we test our ideas. We test potential solutions to things, and we make them better as a result. And by doing all these things and by being authentic as well, we make people feel less alone, and we can show that we're an ally and that we're different and that we have things that are different about us as well, because there's nothing worse than feeling like you're the only one in a team, like the only woman in an engineering team, or the only gay in an engineering team, or the only person going through, being transgender or anything, or going through depression or being not neurotypical. It's really isolating, especially if you can't see anyone around you going through that as well. And like Tammy Baldwin, US Senator, said, there's not just going to be a magic day where we wake up and it's okay to just express ourselves. We have to make that day. We have to do things publicly, like this kind of conversation that we're having now, until it's just normal, until we've normalized things. When it's normal to say, hey, I'm Callum and my pronouns are he, him, when that's just normal, it will just make it that magic day for people who are not cisgendered to be able to express themselves without fear. And that will be a great day. So ultimately, what I wanted to share with you all as BCS members is that we are engineers, but we're also humans with individual experiences. Let's use both to create socially informed solutions, to inform our development, inform our testing, and inform the culture of our teams. Thank you.
Thank you, Callum. That was fantastic. Absolutely enjoyed that. And I've got lots of questions.
Brilliant.
And some of them have come in externally as well. So I just wanted to say, first of all, just to speak on some of what you've talked about in the presentation. I think about the de-individuation, if I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah.
Never used that word before. I meet a few intersections, if you like, in diversity. And I find just being those alone is exhausting.
Yeah.
You learn to mask and you keep those areas separated, work and home. And it is absolutely, you feel almost some days like you're completely fake. And that's a horrible way to live. And I think as I get older, I definitely see the value in being my true, authentic self every day and not hiding those things for other people. Because I keep everything separate, and I shouldn't do that. And I think that I'm probably going to learn from you, I'm sure, as we work together, and maybe I'll build that confidence that I need to be my true, authentic self. And to speak on where you said the times are changing, I think it's no longer okay for companies to just focus on the hive and that hive mentality, which builds that engineering monoculture, right? People want to understand what companies are going to do to support them when they come to work for them. And I get asked those questions from people all the time. And I know that other companies are probably getting those as well. And I've heard it at other conferences. And so, yeah, it's a massive area for companies now that they just need to focus on that. People are no longer willing to work for that with that hive mentality. They want to understand what companies are going to do for them as individuals. So speaking to the engineering monoculture, we do have some questions. And again, as Maddie mentioned to everyone, if you have any others, please do add them to the chat and I will I'll ask them. We've got some time still, 15 minutes still to go. So I'll get on. So how much do you think that Agile is attributed to the engineering monoculture?
Oh, that's a good question. So, yeah, it's Agile is one of those interesting things because really the purpose of Agile is to allow us all to work in the way that we want to. We see what works and we respond to it. But what we tend to find is that there is a definite monoculture around Agile, that people have put forward books or blogs or ways of working, and people just adhere to them. They're not embracing the differences of their people. They're not embracing what needs to be different about their organization. And instead, what we're seeing is, no, we have to do it this way because the book said this way. And everyone read the same book because there's not loads of them, or everyone went on the same certification course, and everyone's thinking the same way there. But what we're also finding with regards to like agility, when we get hyper agile, when we go to maximum levels of Agile, we go to a CI/CD pipeline, and we go towards the mechanized route of delivery a lot more. It's an engineering solution first and foremost, and we're trying to take the humanity out of it. And to that end, like I said earlier, we end up focusing on having engineers doing things the right way, using the same tools, not even thinking about our organization and what our organization needs. It's like, we need a pipeline. Other people have a pipeline, we need a pipeline. So we end up, in that very monoculture kind of situation where we don't even necessarily, because we're going fast as well, we're not giving ourselves time to think about what we need as humans in terms of process and in terms of just engineering effectively.
Yeah, and I think there's actually somebody else from one of the other BCS groups who has done a really great presentation around Agile, and it speaks to the engineering monoculture as well. So I will link you to that and share that, so you'll probably find some some links to what you're talking about as well. It's a really good presentation. Anyway, I'll move on with the other questions. Okay, so companies work hard to advertise what they do for diversity and inclusion, and beyond supporting Pride Month, what do you think companies can do to reduce the attrition of people from LGBTQIA+ backgrounds?
Oh, wow. Yeah. A lot of the attrition, when I've seen it, when I've been through it, it has been through being made to feel that I wasn't supported specifically. So the ways to get around that, and if this is attrition due to LGBTQIA+ issues, is to know about how LGBTQIA+ people work and think. So this is about training managers to deal with things like minority stress and anxiety, learning how to deal with microaggressions and address them in a timely way, how to talk to your LGBTQIA+ individuals. I always say to my managers, because of my minority stress, I'm kind of bad at taking feedback sometimes, because sometimes I see it as like when when I came out and my family didn't really do well with it, you give them some information, things get bad, you go, and you go into fight or flight. So it's about learning these types of things, how to address, if homophobia comes up, if somebody says, oh, you're too emotional, how does your manager support you and go, that's not on? And as well, how do we celebrate as well? How do we build a culture where we celebrate authenticity and diversity? We say like rainbow logos and stuff, but what are they really doing? Are they working with the communities? Are they, really showing that they care about things? Are they giving you role models who are also LGBTQIA+? So reaching out to groups, giving role models, promoting people and giving, having senior people who are minorities as well, really will help with that sort of like retention. More than just performative things like, oh, we changed the logo.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we've got some questions about experiences, as you talked about. So you talked about experiences, and mostly people align that with their external customers. They don't really consider the internal customers being their staff, for example. So how do you think that engineering teams can work with other teams, such as customer success or product, to integrate experiences of staff into their products?
Yeah, no, that's a really good idea. Basically, what you can do there is use the concept of user personas. And your user personas don't have to be an end customer outside of the organization. Any team, any product development team will have customers, whether that's other engineers, whether that's product teams, whether it's a product owner you're giving demos to, or testers even. And we can feed into having user personas based around our own experiences, what we need and what we want, and try and flesh them out and make them holistic. Basically, we're making our teammates or other teams feel less like an organizational block and more like a person, effectively. So rather than saying, oh, I have to give over my API, I have to contract that with the search team, you're saying, right, I'm going to go contract with Bill. Bill needs this kind of information. They need to know about this and this and this. And the way they like that information is this. You can do that user persona type thing to humanize the people that you're working with. I think that's kind of speaking to what they were talking about.
Okay, so now I've got some general questions for you. What would be the one piece of advice you'd give to someone starting in the QA and testing field for the first time?
Oh, so be interested and be ready to investigate. If you want to be a tester and it's your first thing and you're really interested in testing, show that you can drive out and investigate for information, that you're hungry for knowledge and that you question things. Testing is all about finding out information and giving that information to people so they can make decisions on it. So you want to basically be able to not just look for the surface level of information, you want to be able to dig in deep and get that information out so you can share it with people. So yeah, my big top tip is if you want to be a tester, work out how to find information and investigate things.
Great. And what advice would you give to someone who's having a rough time at work due to their queer identity and how to look after themselves?
Ooh. Yeah, I can speak to what helped to me, which was to, I went to my peers. I found my queer peers effectively, and sometimes those are within a company and a lot of times those are outside. We talk about chosen family a lot, and I have my queer chosen family, and I was able to actually talk about issues such as that I'm too emotional thing that helped me to talk through it and realize that no, the problem wasn't me. It was terrible that this happened, and it was the other person that was to blame. So I say find out and reach out to the people around you, your queer family, your queer peers, to help you through these times, because they're chosen family for a reason, and they're there and they love you and they will support you through these things. You don't have to go through it alone, and even if that's like finding a therapist, or joining a group or speaking to a charity that can support you through these times. Don't go through this alone, and find people who are going to understand what you're going through as well.
Great answer. Yeah, it's good to have a support system around you. And for the final question that I've got today, and I think this is quite a nice one to end on, you did talk about some of the experiences that you've had as a queer person in tech, but do you have a particularly positive queer experience at work that you'd like to share with everyone?
Yes. So the biggest one for me is when somebody came over to me. I was working at a big defense contractor, and it was very, I want to say very polo shirts and chinos, if you get what I mean by that. Everyone was very the same. Yeah. And I rocked up in my shirts and my earring and my tattoos and all of this. And I want to say after about a year of working there, somebody came up to me and told me that I'd given them the confidence to come out as non-binary and start wearing blouses at work. And they did. And they said that having me around and being around, they said they first started to feel safe when they sat near me, because they knew that people would focus more on this than on them, and it gave them that confidence. And also they could see that it wasn't going to be a problem, because people accepted me, so they'll accept them. So that was probably the most positive experience that I had, was being that being there for somebody effectively, being a peer and being someone in a senior role that basically just showed that, yeah, you can be queer and a senior tester or a test lead, and it's fine. It's not the end of the world. So yeah, really positive experience. The second one that I had was when I changed a whole organization's Pride thing. They were going to spend the money on a party internally for themselves, and I talked them around into instead using the money to hire in, to bring in a speaker from the Albert Kennedy Trust. And they gave all of that money they were going to spend on a party to a queer organization. And instead we had a bake sale, and we made money ourselves, had a bake sale, and put even more money to the Albert Kennedy Trust, who is a queer organisation in London helping LGBTQIA+ who are homeless. They sent us somebody to do a talk to talk about that and to thank us. And I think that was more worthwhile because it wasn't performative; it was actual legitimate. So yeah, exactly. that as well.
Oh, brilliant! And to your first point that you made, you can't tell because he's sitting down, but Callum's actually 6'1", so that probably adds to the the whole idea that you've got this loud persona. And yeah, I was shocked when I first met him and realized how tall he was. He made me feel really short. Okay. All right, well, that's it. I've got one more slide to share with everyone, so I'm just going to do that quickly. And it's about, if I can find it, BCS membership. Let me share. All right, so yeah, if anyone's ever interested in joining the BCS, anyone who sees the recording afterwards, you can go along to bcs.org and look for the membership part of the site, and use the code BCS Pride to get 20% off your annual membership. It's really easy to sign up, and hopefully we will gain some more members from this talk. And yeah, it would be lovely to have you as a member working alongside us, and hopefully even volunteering. So that would be great too. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop sharing. Thanks, Callum. Amazing talk. I knew it would be brilliant. I have seen it before, but it's always good to hear it again. And, it just cements some of the things that I talk about a lot as well out in this space. Thank you to Maddie for being co-host. I'm sorry you couldn't host today. Wish you could have. You could have done a better job than I did, but I hope I did you proud. I hope so. And yeah, thank you everybody for listening in, and yeah, have a great evening. That's it. Thanks. Bye. Bye.